someone is going to win a major in 2027 that is 13 years old right now. Like, we have never heard of them. Everybody forgets this.
I think right now Canada has more sauce. I think Canada's a better watch on TV as far as players. They've got more interesting players, more exciting tennis coming from north of the border. All right, welcome back to the channel. And Gil Gross, welcome to The Slice. Thanks for joining us here today.
Good to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Many of you guys, I'm sure, know who Gil Gross is. You've probably watched his channel. I hope you have. And if you haven't, you should. But he's joining us today because I wanted to, at the end of the 2022 tennis season, which was another great one, I don't know, we could talk about that, maybe less dramatic or less interrupted than the others. It felt a little bit more back to normal, although it definitely wasn't. I wanted to take a look at comparing the USA versus Canada as far as tennis nations. I'm Canadian, if you didn't know, and Gil is clearly an American, as you probably know. I don't know, not clearly. When you listen to him broadcast,
no, it's okay. We're both clearly. You throw in a couple of boots, and I don't know.
Apparently,
what word do I say, or any American would say, that gives you the most pause, like pronunciation wise?
I mean, there's not too many that I can really pick up on. It's more like the way you guys talk, and especially within sports, and general confidence and general love of the country, which I get and appreciate. There was one though, and it's actually slipping my mind, that I've heard Americans talk about. Anyways, I'll have to come back to it if I can remember it, but I can't remember what word it is. But it's just a word, a way you say it. Not really like a boot, but it's not like an accent thing. It's just more like something you guys say. But I don't know. What's one thing that you think that Americans say that the rest of the world doesn't?
It's mostly about, like, the way you say. I mean, I'm just gonna say it normally. Like, I say about. Like, when you say about, it does not sound like that.
Like, so I sound like I have an accent.
A little bit, like, yeah. When you say about, I can tell you're from Canada.
Cool. That's cool. I appreciate that. From my time in Europe, I started to then, when I called back to my family or friends in Canada, I started to hear, oh yeah, we do have a little bit of an accent, because you start to get all mixed in with the whole world. Anyways, Canada versus the US. It's a rivalry as old as, not time, but like, I don't even know when Canada became a real country. We've had battles, like real battles. We've had wars, but in sports, it's always been this kind of David and Goliath thing, where you guys obviously have 10x the amount of people and resources and stuff like that. But in tennis, I think it's a really interesting question right now. Is it feels like, Gil, Canada has really caught up to the United States as far as firepower of our top players. And to me, that's kind of scandalous, as what I just mentioned. US has way more infrastructure and people to choose from and all of this. But I just wanted to get some of your takes on kind of where the current state of American tennis, ask you some questions about that, and kind of get your takes on some of the new players, what's been changing over the years and stuff like that. So does that sound good?
Sounds great.
There's a huge difference in the amount of prestige and championships and titles that the US has won compared to Canada historically. People know that Canada just won our first Davis Cup. US has a number of those, I'm sure. But in general, Gil, why do you think that the USA has stopped producing the results that they have in the past? I know American players, especially O'Reilly, Opelka, hate this question, but why do you think that USA tennis is not dominant like it used to be?
Well, I genuinely do think that the rest of the world got better, more so than the United States got worse. I thought that there were probably some philosophical issues in terms of development that the Americans ran into at a certain point in time when the game started to become more baseline centric. I don't know that suited some of the more offensively minded American players who oftentimes had big serve, big forehand, limited mobility, limited backhand, just to kind of stereotype, a prototype. But for the most part, I think that the volume has been there. Like, the Americans have had a bunch of really good players, and there just hasn't been the transcendent major contender that the United States had for decade upon decade upon decade, where Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi, and I would lump Jim Courier into that era as well. That was kind of the last era with the perennial major contender, to a point where Andy Roddick, who had this very illustrious career, did win a major, made a bunch of other finals, got hijacked by Roger Federer in the mid 2000s completely. He was kind of criticized as almost someone who isn't achieving enough for the top of men's tennis. And lo and behold, the next 15 or so years, I mean, we'd love to have an Andy Roddick in men's tennis. And then on the women's side, it's been strong as ever. And with Coco, look, it seems like there's going to be a little bit of a gap. Serena, it'll be bridged by Coco, and all will be good in the hood on the women's side.
Right. And that's a pretty good capture of kind of how things have gone. And it is funny. I feel like Andy Roddick still has that chip on his shoulder for me. Like, guys, I'm number one in the world. I just won, I guess he won the US Open, and I'm doing well. Like just give me a break. I'm not Pete Sampras. I'm never going to be. And there's this other guy like Neo Sampras here, Federer, who's kicking my ass every time we play almost. Give me a break. So that's funny. And that's a good point. And on the women's side of things, you're right. Obviously, it's been amazing until, more recently. And then we got some really good prospects. This current squad of young guys, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is coming. But the current squad of young guys, what's your kind of vibe of the Fritzes, Opelka, Tommy Paul, Tiafoe? They all grew up together. What's your kind of take on, I guess, their talent pool and how it matches up to, because they're all, like you said, you guys have always had numbers, and you still have numbers. I'm looking at the top 100 here of Americans. I think there's over 10 guys in the top 100, which is really good. What do you think about this top group of the kind of next gen players who are now just regulars on the tour?
They've done really well to improve. I think Taylor Fritz has worked super hard to maximize his abilities. He's really changed the way he plays to, become more offensive, to go after the forehand more. He's always had a great backhand. He's beefed up his serve as well. I mean, Fritz, for a guy who I don't think is that naturally gifted athletically, has done really, really well for himself now being a top 10 player. Tiafoe had a very, very wonky forehand that he's made a lot of technical adjustments on, and that's been huge. He's also worked on his fitness. I think he's very naturally gifted athletically, but just needed to lock in more with diet and training, and he's done that. Not to mention he's learned how to focus more in matches. So now he's a top 20 player. Opelka needs to stay healthy. I mean, it's been, he's been off the map, and I think there's a lot of promise there because I do think he moves a lot better than John Isner, and has a really good backhand. His forehand is not as good as Isner's, which is a little bit of a drawback for him. And then Tommy Paul. I mean, again, what strikes me about all these guys, they have really good coaches. Tommy Paul, I know you've spoken with Brad Stein in the past, and Wayne Ferreira is Tiafoe's coach, and Fritz has Paul Anacone and Michael Russell and David Nankin. I mean, they have really, really great coaches, all of them, and they work really hard, but at the same time, none of them seem to have contending for major titles regularly in their future.
That's fair. And I think your point earlier about how the rest of the world has gotten better, it does seem like that, because I always tell my friends now, they're always like, who's the best players in the world? I'm like, they're all European, for the last, and mainly that's obviously the big three, but it does seem like the rest of the world, and obviously now Canada has kind of matched it, and I don't think there's a lot of factors that play into it for America. Do all the best athletes come and play tennis? Probably not. Would LeBron James actually do good on a tennis court? That's another question. So there's a lot of factors to that. But yeah, I do think Canada has joined you guys up there with like the ability to like really develop these players and give them good coaches, like you just mentioned about those 4 guys who are great examples of that. Who would you say, if you had to pick only 3, like a top 3, who would you say are your top 3 most successful, and this is men and women, most successful American players over the next 5 years, let's say?
Coco, I mean, look, Coco is a forehand away from being Iga's chief rival, for being at the top sport battling Iga. But there are no other holes. She's great at everything else, but the forehand is a very, very legitimate weakness. And I'm so fascinated to see this offseason what she does with it and what it looks like next year, because I'm hoping that they are going to be aggressive in adjusting that side. I just can't. And this is going to sound harsh, but it's actually a compliment. With as talented as she is, I don't know how it could get worse. So I hope that they make changes that are real and significant, because I can't see it. Again, I can't see it getting any worse. So you might as well go for it and change the grip, change significant things like that. But, it's Coco. Coco has that chance to, and look, she's already doing so well at her age. Amazing head on her shoulders, as athletic as anyone on tour, and a lot of awesome technical tools also. After that, I'm gonna say, like, the way I'm gonna interpret your question, who is going to win majors in the next, like, who has the best shot at winning majors in the next 10 years? Some of them we might not know, because 10 years is a long time. We don't know the 12-year-olds right now. But I want to talk about Ben Shelton right now.
Okay.
Because Ben Shelton right now is the guy who is very intriguing, because we don't actually know exactly who he is in terms of what he might be able to do. But I'd say he's someone going into 2023 that could be the next big thing. We'll see. The weaponry is there. His serve is absolutely massive. The forehand's a weapon. He comes forward, very athletic for his size, very powerful. So I'm really pumped to see Ben Shelton. And then I would say third is probably Amanda Anisimova.
Interesting.
Just with her ball striking, and how young she still is. I'm trying to look at her age. She's 21 right now. I feel like she's one of those players who seems older because she's been around a while. But just with the wide openness of the women's game and how well she strikes the tennis ball, I think she's going to have a chance to compete for majors. Again, the other men, the depth is there. They're great players, but it just feels like they are going to be capped at a certain point. So I would say to win majors right now, I'm looking at Shelton, Goff, and Anisimova.
Interesting. So skewing very young on your, which I think gives your answer some shoulder time to materialize, which is fair, because when I thought of that question, that's, definitely Shelton and Coco Gauff were 2 of the ones that I thought you might say. And just a note here on Shelton, I know there's the big American hype, and I think I might have poked a little fun of this on Twitter or something. So, it's like, you guys need stars. So every time someone like shows a little bit of light, you like kind of put them on probably too big of a pedestal. And I think that is a issue in tennis when these players, like in France, for example, I've talked to French coaches who literally are like, the reason like some French players, like even like Felix, like growing up in Canada, obviously he's Canadian. There's just like such an expectation. And I always say, like, expectation is the hardest thing to play with in tennis. Like, it's like nobody is immune. Some players are better than others, but it's just tough. So anyways, but Ben Shelton, I was like, he came in and he beat Casper Ruud on a hard court was that Cincinnati?
Yeah.
I'm like, honestly, Ryan Peniston beat Casper Ruud on grass. It's like, it's not the biggest accomplishment in the world. No offense, friend of the show, Casper Ruud. But what else? And I realized at that time he hadn't even won a challenger, which I think is correct. At that point, he had not won a challenger.
Yeah, but I don't know how many he had played, right?
Good
Because he
point.
wasn't on the pro circuit really. He was just still a college player who was taking some wild cards.
Good point. So he would have played maybe like I would have to look it up. I would assume he would play like 5 or so a year for the couple of years before that. And like you said, yeah, playing them. So it's not like he was grinding on the Challenger Tour all year. But then there was a guy, conversely, like Gabriel Diallo, who's like kind of like our version of Ben Shelton in Canada, who I'm really stoked about. And he had like won a Challenger, even playing that college schedule, right? Like he just like randomly won one earlier this year and in Granby, which was sick. Anyway, so I was like, let's wait and see on Ben Shelton. Let's see him like win some challengers before I really get excited. And I think he won like 3 in a row, right?
Three in a row to end the season.
That kind of answered my question. Now he's top 100. I just looked it up. Yeah, he's 6'4". No, he's a star for sure in the making. So I totally understand why you picked him.
You make a good point though, and I want to say, I was thinking about this going into the last couple of weeks, really. Jensen Brooksby, right? I mean, there was a lot of excitement and buzz around Jensen Brooksby, and part of it was the unique style, and nobody could really understand how he was winning as much as he was.
Yeah,
I was very excited about it. I didn't think it was a fluke. I thought it was going to be more sustainable than it proved to be this year. Now, I still don't want to write him off by any stretch, but when it comes to Ben Shelton, I was thinking, okay, could we be running into a similar thing here? I think the major difference between Shelton and Brooksby is weapons. Like Brooksby was a player who was winning in a way that we don't really see players win very often. Now I was thinking there might have been a little bit of Andy Murray there in the way Brooksby was playing. And I still feel that way a little bit, but it's hard. It's really hard to win that way. Shelton, it's like, all right, you're going to come out with that serve and that forehand, and you're going really, really far just off of that. The rest is bonus. The rest is all great. And I think he has more than that, but we already know how far that takes you.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. Like first serve, forehand. If you have world class of those, you have a ticket to the top. You just have to be able to fill in the other pieces. You're right. I love that. I was thinking about Jensen, remembering him because I just looked up. He had a terrible. Well, I don't want to be too hard on him, but like he had a fairly bad year this year. Like 24 wins, 22 losses, like basically 500. Which I don't know how that works. And like, so he's still ranked in the top 50. But yeah, after so much hype, he kind of had a let off, which is totally fine, totally normal. Jensen, if you're watching, keep going. You're doing fine. But yeah, he would kind of do this style where he's just like, look at this style. You've never seen this before to guys like Djokovic or whoever it was. And they're like, ah. And he was like, would like lose almost. They'd be like, oh, you thought I was going to come in here with a real serve? Like, wow, look at this. And you're like, how do I return this pusher's serve that doesn't bounce up high enough for me to hit? Like, what do I do here?
No, that was a big deal. I think guys were freaking out in the beginning there. They were like, what is this? And I think this year there were conversations probably going into Jensen Brooksby matches where like coaches were like, all right, you're going to have to be patient here and just, this is what to expect. He's not going to hit it very hard. He's not going to miss very often.
Yeah.
He's going to look weird when he tries to slice his backhand.
It's incredible. It's like, I remember the one point where I was like, what, this is awesome that we're watching this. I think he was like playing Djokovic at the US Open. He from like a mid-court forehand position, like forehand sliced it and then approached behind it. And Djokovic is just like, this is not in my memory bank. I forget how to hit this. And just like netted it. I was like, it's just such a funny thing after, obviously tennis is kind of homogenized and the play styles have all become very, what Ben Shelton is going to be really good at. So, which is fine, but it's just interesting to see something else there. So yeah, American tennis has so much to offer right now as far as play styles, players, personalities, which is cool. I would love quickly, before we get to a little debate here, what do you about our Canadian players? What do you think are the ceilings for FAA and Shapo specifically?
Well, first off, I think the ceilings are pretty similar, which might be a hot take. I mean, look, there's no debating. Felix has accomplished more thus far, and he's a little younger. So there's definitely an instinct to say, okay, Felix is destined to be a better player than Denis Shapovalov. But I actually think they are still fairly comparable, and Felix just has been more mature in his development than Shapovalov has been. But I still think Denis has, and I really loved, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but I really loved what I saw from Shapovalov towards the end of 2022, just playing with a lot more discipline and control. And he's a player who I'm really intrigued to see coming into next year. And I feel like if Denis is going to make, have a top 10 season, I feel like 2023 would be it. And this is where he might make his move. But I think so. I actually think both of them have the ability, are going to have the ability to win majors. Again, I think with Felix, that's widely accepted based on his trajectory. And I even think for him, for all the success he's had, there's a lot of stuff that is likely to get better. But talk about a serve and a forehand. I mean, his first serve is top 10 in the world, in my opinion. His forehand has gotten much more consistent, and it was always potent. With how early he takes it, how precise it is, and the speed and the weight that he gets behind that shot. And I really like the way that he's using his athleticism a little bit more. It's just about, getting better on the slower surfaces and becoming more consistent week to week. I think both of those things are going to be very dependent on his ability to construct baseline rallies a little bit better and to improve his backhand. That way he's winning from neutral more, because once the point gets to neutral, opponents are going to be able to find his backhand at will. Whereas, certainly it's really difficult to find his backhand off of your return of serve, when he's serving bombs at you. And, also, sometimes he's returning so aggressively that it's difficult to kind of play on your terms. Did I answer the question there? I think both
Totally.
of their ceilings. Yeah, look, I don't think either of them. I don't see either of them. I don't look at either of them as a level of prospect that I think Alcaraz is or that Holger Rune is. But I do think that both of them should expect to win major titles.
That's interesting. I like how you said earlier, it might be a hot take to think that they both have the same ceiling, because I think a lot of people would see that as a hot take. And because it's recently, especially in 2022, it's been easy to say, like, okay, Felix has kind of separated himself a little bit as far as a prospect, where I've always been, and even I've kind of started to think that, and that's just because he has literally separated himself in the rankings a bit. But like we did talk about on your show, the type of tennis that Shapo was playing there at the end of the year really gave me more hope, and is the type of tennis he can play to be dangerous at majors. I think the concept of, to think about what you're saying as far as them, yeah, I think they can both win majors for sure. I do think that we're heading into a territory where it's like contending for majors is like going to look a lot different than it has in the past, because our status quo for that is like being upset if they didn't win every major is like the three guys at the top, right? Like if they if they're not making the semifinals, that's a bad major for the big three. That's going to change, right? So I do think there's going to be much more opportunity, and majors will be easier to win on the ATP. So guys like Shapovalov could just come out and win a US Open if he just blitzes everyone, et cetera, et cetera. I think, though, just to insert my opinion here, I do think Felix is going to be a type of guy who I would not be surprised if he wins like multiple majors. And Shapovalov, I could see it more as like one or two. But I do see Felix as getting right up there with maybe not. He's like, I do see him as the same tier basically now as like Alcaraz and Rune, and that'll play out. I see him actually higher than Rune right now, obviously, because he is technically ranked higher, but we'll see going into 2023. So that's a super interesting conversation. But to stay on the American-US train, or the Canada-US train, you said that you think Shapovalov and Felix can both win majors, which you did not tell me specifically that Fritz or any of those other guys you think will be winning majors anytime soon. So that brings me to the debate of who right now is a better tennis nation. Is it Canada, where we got kind of really top heavy? You probably couldn't name the fifth, sixth, seventh best Canadian players.
Steven Diaz?
Well, Pospisil, and then then it goes Galarneau on the men, and then Diallo. Diallo is going to be a star. I'm telling you, he's going to be battling with Ben Shelton. He's 6'7". He actually made Ben Shelton look a little bit small out there, and he beat him recently in the Challengers fairly easily. But right now, if you're taking our firepower versus yours, men's and women, we got Shapovalov, Felix, who you said both can win majors. We got Andreescu, who has won a major. And we got Fernandez, who almost won a major. And you guys got a lot of players. But I think right now, if you're taking like who has the most danger to win majors, men and women combined, I think Canada's a little bit more dangerous and has a little bit more firepower as a group than the US players do.
So, okay, what's the count in the 2020s? For majors, is it I'm trying to think here on the women's side. Kenin was that a 2020? No, that was 2019. I'm trying to think if we're tied, because if we're tied 0-0, then we can frame this argument as, will the United States or Canada have more majors in this decade?
In the 2020s, yeah, it is, right? Because Stevens won the U.S. Open which year?
That was 17.
Okay, a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Kenin was like, it might have been 2020.
Let's see.
Let's look it up.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We can act like Kenin never won it because no offense. I don't want to be that guy, but we can just act like that never happened. It's like the curse of winning a slam as on the women's side right now. But
that was 2020 though. That was the first major of 2020, Australian Open.
Okay, so you guys have started with a 1-0 lead.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is fine. It's not all about majors, but it is a good thing. So what you were asking, sorry, about the 2020s?
So if we frame it that way, and I don't know, 1-0 lead or not, I tend to think in this debate, I think that the women's side is more of the X factor, because I actually don't see Felix. I see Felix and Chapo. Look, I'd be surprised if Felix didn't win a major. I would be, but I would also be surprised if he wins 3 or more. Right, Chapo. Even though I said I think their ceilings are the same, let's also be honest. Felix has shown us more. So if I'm predicting who does better in their career, I am predicting Felix. I just think Chapo is right there in terms of ability.
Right. Got it.
So let me give Chapo 1 here. Okay, so I'm giving Canada 3. Okay, because I'm going to say Felix 2, Chapo 1. I'm going to give Canada 3. I know that sounds low. It probably sounds low. And let me just counteract anyone who's thinking like, wait, that sounds low. I want to reiterate that there are people who are someone is going to win a major in 2027 that is 13 years old right now. Like we have never heard of them. Everybody forgets this, that other people emerge. So I just want to make that clear. And by the way, I think Alcaraz could be a real hog potentially. I think that could happen.
Potentially.
So anyway, that's all to say that I think Coco Gauff and the WTA prowess of the United States, which I do take over Canada. You
take them. Okay, that's fair. But you take them over. Coco Gauff, and who else has been dominant right now on the WTA? Who else are you thinking of?
Pegula's the world number 3, but I don't think she is going to win a major.
Wow. No, but fair enough. Pegula is. That's true. I want to hear who else you're thinking, because I kind of forgot about Pegula. We're both throwing shade. Madison
Keys is 27 years old and can still absolutely win. She has had multiple deep runs at majors, including the Australian Open semifinal this year.
True.
Okay, multiple runs. And I know that her career has been a roller coaster, but to me, she can still win a slam. Danielle Collins has also been an Australian Open merchant. She's gone deep back-to-back years.
True.
Anisimova is 21 years old. I still think she can win it. Now, and so, yeah, I think there's more because of volume, and I'm feeling good about the women against Andreescu and Leylah Fernandez. I am.
Okay, so I get that. It's the classic, yeah, it's like the numbers. It's like, we will win the battle, you might win the war because you have 10x the amount of people and seemingly 10x the amount of players. Because we kind of got four we got the core four, as we call them, on our North and the Net Canadian show. And yeah, it's like, I think right now Andreescu, if she played Coco Gauff, I think it'd be a super tight match, even though Andreescu's not fully back to the top of her game. Not maybe she never will. She kind of took the WTA by surprise and played on that Alcaraz type of, like, she literally basically did what Alcaraz did this year in 2019. And then there's Leylah, and then it's just figuring out how these different players play with expectation. But you're right, because like players cannot come through on their potential, and you guys just have more at bats basically with like this player turning out to win multiple majors. So okay, so you give us 2 majors for Felix, 1 for Chapo. Any more for Bianca?
No.
Savage. Fair enough though. But I'm kind of emotionally invested in that because I'm like, I do think she can win another one, but it is like you get to that weird twilight zone in a career where you're like, she's 22 now, and it's like one more year of no slams, and then it's like now you are scratching for them like Dimitrov or something, where you're like, no, I'm still right here.
Exactly. And by the way, there would be very few things I hope for more than for Leylah Fernandez to be elite, because there's no one who's easier to root for and watch. But I'm not sold at this point. There's just not enough consistent week to week to week evidence that she's there.
True. So true. That's fair. And she's still very young, obviously. But so you don't think she has a slam, or wait, do you think Leylah will win a slam?
No, if I were to predict, I mean, and again, I'm not.
Yeah.
I hope it's understood. Like both of them very much have a chance, but if I were to predict over under 0.5, I do take the under.
Got it. And that's fair. And because there's just so many players on the WTA who can win. But which players, men or women? I think you would take Coco Gauff winning slams. I would give her, I would give her probably. I mean, it's just, this is such a ridiculous thing to do, predict amount of slams, but like, because like you could be like, well, Serena won 23. It's like, well, I don't think she's going to win 20 or 15 or 10. Like, I don't know. I think I would give her like 5. Maybe that sounds low for people, but like I would give her like
that's a lot
4 or 5.
Like people need to realize. Yeah. I mean, it's a weird era we just went through. Like, totally. I think we might need to readjust our minds to like, oh, you're amazing. You're incredible. You're the best in the world. That looks like 7 majors. That looks like 8 majors.
Yeah. Or when you were saying that, I was like 5. I was thinking like, yeah, like it's like, wow, it's like you're going to win a reasonable amount of slams, where it's like, yeah, like our endorphin centers where if like what's a good player has just been totally maxed out for the last 2 decades. So that's fair enough. But yeah, debate wise, I think right now Canada has more sauce. I think Canada's a better watch on TV as far as players. They've got more interesting players, more exciting tennis coming from north of the border. But I will give it to you that in the next 10 years, if we add up all the accomplishments, you guys will probably get back in the driver's seat. But that's just a function of numbers going in. So that's my official position right now. I think our players are more interesting to watch. Chapo, Bianca, Felix, they're just so potent to me. And then you guys have all these other guys who are really good and awesome to watch, but they seem to cause more of a stir on Twitter.
You have us beat on sauce. I'll give you sauce. Canada has the sauce.
You heard it here.
The U.S. might have the accolades or the major titles at the end of the decade, but the sauce or the maple syrup will certainly belong to the Canadians.
Okay, well, I'll take that for now. You got to take what you can get when you guys do have a very good pipeline in business terms. You got a great pipeline of players coming down to carry on the American flag. So I'm excited to watch this and commentate and cover the sport with you for hopefully the next decade and beyond. We've never met in person or played, which I think somewhere on our YouTube channels, people have been like saying you guys should play, and you thought you'd take me in a match, which is like totally fair. So hopefully we'll meet in person. But anyways, Gil, I know you got to run, but thank you for being on the Slice and pleading your case about the American tennis plight right now. If people don't know, where can they find you online to get your special tennis sauce?
Gil Gross is the name of the YouTube channel. At Gil _ Gross is the Twitter account. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun doing battle with you on our respective tennis nations. And yeah, hopefully we do meet in person and have a hit soon.
That would be great. And we'll see how the Americans and Canadians do in 2023, which we're about to be in. So we'll see you next time on The Slice, everyone. Thank you for watching.